What's up, ladies and gents? Noli here, bringing you my first video on the DLC, the Butcher's Western Pack. It's my first impressions. I've played for almost 3-4 hours with these new weapons, and I'm a huge fan. I really enjoy this DLC. On the whole, Overkill's make me making each DLC better, feature more relevant items, make the achievements an improvement, and I feel in almost every single field, this one is the best. Most certainly, in my opinion, with the weapons. Not only have they managed to make 3 very unique feeling, very fun weapons, but they're also all viable in their own special way, and that's great to see. I'm going to start things off by talking about my favourite, that being the repeater sniper rifle. I had a feeling I'd enjoy this. I like the idea of a sniper with a sort of assault rifle magazine. As it happens, it's not really that sort of weapon. It obviously loads single bullet at a time. I'm awful with my terminology, please excuse me. But yeah, this may well be my favourite weapon in the game. What makes it for me? Well, it's great without the scope on. It's the scope. It really is. I feel like I'm back in the Call of Duty world at war days, quick scoping. It just feels incredible. And weapon synergy is something I've talked about briefly. If you're enjoying using a weapon, you're going to use it better. It's as simple as that. So if you're finding, even though this weapon may not have the world's best stats on paper, you're finding you're hitting more shots with it, please keep using it. And that's how I feel with this one. It feels so good for me. It's just my weapon. I'm absolutely in love with it. I find myself landing those headshots. The problem with the damage is it doesn't exceed 200, which is quite an important milestone for snipers because it allows you to body shot the armored tans. But at the end of the day, that isn't a problem. Because if you're having a much easier time aiming with this thing, because that scope is so good if you ask me, then you're going to hit the headshot. So it doesn't matter that you can't one-shot body shot. Plus, you can use this in all sorts of different builds, which allows you to maybe get that additional damage in one way or another, run any sort of secondary, because you don't really need to sink a load of sniper skills in to make this weapon viable. You know, Kilmer is a nice idea, but even then, it's not a huge priority. One of the main reasons I love this weapon so much is just the fact that there's nothing quite like it. While there are other snipers that work in a very similar way, the way this one works is just that much more refined for my playstyle that it was love at first sight. I'll be honest, I've not wanted to use anything else, even though we've had so many cool new additions in this DLC. I can't implore you enough, if you're just wanting a quick review of this DLC, I think I'd pay $5 for this weapon. People be screaming out, "Noli, don't give Overkill any ideas." I won't, but they've really given me a gem here, I feel. And it may be the first weapon I choose to really go in depth with from this DLC pack, because I really am a fan. Now, moving on to the second weapon, let's talk about the Peacemaker. I think it's the secondary. It is the pistol, and it's pretty strong. It's got a lot of damage. I'd say it probably outperforms the Bronco in almost every way. I think it's aesthetically wonderful, and I think there's something I've already mentioned about these new animations making the game look more like the AAA title it should, especially seeing as how it's had AAA sales. Well, the Peacemaker, its animations are just beautiful. You do the whole cowboy flip when you take it out and when you draw it, and it makes the best noises. I don't know why the noises are something I've been focusing on, but I've just been hearing it and thinking, wow, this is cool. So stylish. When you fire it, you got your left hand over the top. It's just a wonderful feeling weapon. And again, for the same reason, player synergy. If it's working well with them, keep it up. It really feels strong. One-shot headshot on tasers. Hits all the important milestones, if you ask me. Now, it does have its downsides, reasonably slow reload, very much the same as the repeater had. But it makes up for it, really, with its ridiculous damage. In the same way, the repeater probably makes up for it for the fact it's got a huge overall number of bullets you're allowed to load in at once. 15, that's very, very impressive. Now, one thing I did forget to mention with both of them, how well they deal with specials. As I've said, the pistols is fantastic. Get that one-shot headshot on taser, two-shot to the body. Depending on your build, I actually used it in a pretty unique crit build, which felt very, very strong. But the sniper rifle, the repeater, is Another issue with it is it just misses, and this is painful. It just misses the one-shot headshot through the shield on shields. It's going to do 99 damage, which hurts so badly. Every time it happens, I kind of, I cringe. It's so close to getting there yet so far. So it does have that issue there, but it's one-shot headshot to Cloaker, one-shot headshot to Taser, of course, and you're going to deal with bulldozers very quickly as long as you're accurate. Get rid of that faceplate very, very quickly. So the Repeater is also pretty good against specials on the whole, as is the Peacemaker. Overall, two very strong weapons. I'd say I prefer the Repeater, but the Revolver certainly holds it for its own corner. And if you're a fan of that weapon category, it's a great new addition. Now, finally, this is the big one. You guys have asked for it. It's the bow. How's the bow working? Are the explosive rounds worth anything? Yeah, I really feel like they have balanced the bow and arrow better than basically any other weapon in the game. Now, without explosive rounds, it's by no means the world's best Death Wish weapon. It's doable if you're very, very accurate. But this was so acutely balanced, and I was talking about this so much. It was either going to be overpowered or it's going to be underpowered. Overkill managed to avoid that. They did it quite simply. They gave it this 195 damage, which is quite important because, again, it misses that 200 damage threshold you're looking for with your snipers. And it functions in such a difficult way. It takes a lot of practice. Only once you're really good with it can you use it with no explosive tip. Keep in mind, though, if you use the explosive tip, you're not going to get headshot multipliers, and that causes a problem in its own right. So let me run you through how this works. One of the main issues is its drop. Now, the arrow feels inconsistent. My major gripe with it is when you fire it, I don't feel you can really see it very well. So you can't see what you missed by with your previous shot. So lining up your next shot is basically as hard as the first one was. Once you've worked out exactly what the trajectory, that's a difficult word for me to say for some reason. Once you've worked out what that is at every single range, you're going to have a field day with this thing, and it really is the style weapon. You feel so good when you get that 50-yard snipe with it. It's just incredible, especially when you know that's sticking straight out of some sniper's head along the way. But like I've said, it takes practice, and that's how it's been so well balanced. Keep in mind, it doesn't seem to drop very much. Always aim, if anything, below the target as opposed to above. The drop just doesn't seem to really exist until you get to pretty ridiculous ranges. So it's a difficult weapon to get used to, but it's an awful lot of fun. And yeah, it's totally viable for overkill. It's also a decent enough stealth option if you want to go that way, go for some sort of role play. And it has changed up stealth. It does make it a little harder to get those snipe kills over distance, but you feel that much cooler when you manage to land it. Now, the explosive rounds is what makes this a Death Wish viable weapon, and why I say it's so well balanced. Now, explosive rounds are not necessarily better for picking kills. It'll increase your damage and it won't drop anything, other than the fact you can't pick up any more arrows when you're using it. So the only way to replenish your ammo count is by actually getting on the floor ammo pickup, one dropped by players or purchased in the assets section. So as such, you're running with limited ammo. Similarly, really, to the RPG or the minigun, I suppose. But to the same extent, that means you're not going to be picking up your teammates or even your own ammo bags, which makes it very, very strong for playing in certain teams with particularly ammo-heavy builds. It means you're not going to be picking up a lot of their supply, so it's very, very effective. Now, the explosive rounds it feels really, really strong as a support secondary. Blowing the faceplate off bulldozers very easily. One-shotting shields as long as you hit them straight in the center of the body. Now, one thing to note, the radius is kind of pathetic. I was so disappointed when I fired this across. My first shot was over distance, and it kind of poofed in the distance, and I was like, I don't think I even heard that explosion. It is kind of a bit pathetic, the explosion size, but it's very doable. If you aim for the feet, the explosion damage is enough to kill around the radius, and it retains its damage reasonably well. And what's most important, it carries knockdown, again focusing on support, on Death Wish, helping your teammates out, not picking up too much ammo. If you choose to go without explosive rounds, even being able to sustain yourself off your own ammo pickups. Of course, that comes with its own risks of having to run to where you fired the ammo, but that's fun in and of itself. And whereas you'll find when the GL40 came out, for example, you had a hard time dealing with cloakers. Instead, they managed to make this bow and arrow so first shot, as long as you hit them accurately, you're knocking them on the floor. It means cloakers, who would otherwise be a huge arch nemesis if you were using the explosive round version, because you can't one-shot them, are reasonably easy to deal with this bow and arrow. Beautiful, beautiful piece of balancing that makes it viable, as I said, on all difficulties. Do keep in mind, though, another quite interesting interaction that's very strong for tasers is the fact you cannot shoot really with the bow and arrow while you're being tased, because it reloads one at a time. That means once you fired your last shot, you're being tased for the whole time. There's no way to interrupt them. You're going to have to basically rely on teammates to survive. You may want to consider the shot-proof skill while running the bow and arrow. But overall, bow and arrow is very strong. As I said, it's nicely balanced. So it's not only a very fun weapon, but it's also a viable weapon, which is so important for these DLCs. Finally, let's talk about cosmetics and achievements. Cosmetics, they've really outdone themselves stylistically and thematically. Maybe not my favourite looking mask ever, but they really did manage to hit all the corners of the Western style. They have the bandit mask, the cowboy hat, you know, the sort of Zorro mask idea. What else? We got the sort of Native American styled mask, as I said they probably have. And finally, what's the last one? Oh, of course, the animal skull that's always associated with Westerns. And they all look great. They all customize really nicely with the materials that come with them. And overall, they're not too hard to obtain, which I think is a good step. Listening to the community you find in recent DLCs, not only is it great that it's focused entirely around using these weapons in the way they are meant to be used, but also I imagine people previously have bought DLCs and they've not managed to get access to full cosmetics. I know I haven't in some cases. Sometimes the achievements have been just too much of a pain for it to be worth trying to unlock the mask and get full use out of the DLC. So instead they tried to make these achievements more things that, ooh, that popped up, I wasn't even aiming to do that. Things like killing 6 enemies in 6 seconds with the Peacemaker revolver, which is also thematically great. So I think they've done well there as well. I know some hardcore players might be slightly disappointed the challenge isn't quite there, but it's still the same kind of Payday fun you'd expect from the achievements. Hedgehog is when you shoot 10 arrows into a bulldozer and kill them. That one was a fun one to aim for. So that's it for my brief first impressions. I say brief, I actually went on for quite a long time. A lot to talk about. I think it shows just how much there is to do in this DLC, what's going on with it. And I think I can safely say I recommend it to those of you who seem interested by all these ideas. And I cannot stress enough how strong the repeater is. My personal favourite. I think it's probably the strongest weapon they've added. Though it has a lot of contention from both the bow and arrow and the Peacemaker, and I think that's a really great sign of a good DLC. One thing I forgot to mention, Dynamite, if you ask me, it's a bit of a, what's this doing here? I can barely notice the difference. It seems to have slightly different throw range, maybe explosion range, maybe damage. I can't really tell. It doesn't make enough of a difference to be really worth much to me. I'd still say the Molotov's better, and it's, the most disappointing part of the DLC. So certainly don't pick it up if that's all you want. But I'm going to finish this video off by first of all pointing you guys in the direction of the Western Pack website. You can win one of 30 copies with a pretty fun in-browser minigame, a sort of shooting gallery that I've enjoyed doing. And also a couple of days into this, further into next week, I'm going to be announcing my own little giveaway for this DLC because I really want to share the love on this one. I am such a fan, and I want those of you who've not been able to pick it up yet to give it a go. So just keep in mind that competition may or may not, probably will, involve that mini game on Overkill's website. So do keep practicing it. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.